Hello my buddies! Welcome to a review with Kim Tech. My name is Kim. Today I'll be reviewing the Reencle Prime Home Composter after been using it for over 1 month. This feedback is from my personal use with my daily routines, so my thoughts may be different from yours. All links will be in the description box below along with timestamps, so you can skip to the sections you want. Before we start, I want to note that Reencle was kind enough to send me this product for free, but they have no input in my review. They didn't see this video or had any say in it before I published it. And in case you're not familiar with the Reencle Prime Home Composter, Reencle is a South Korean brand and it was on Indiegogo, similar to Crowdfund, back in 2022. And based on my research, it's currently the only true electric indoor composter that you can continue to feed the microorganisms. There's a difference between compost and soil, which I like to call dirt. The main difference is that compost has microorganisms that decompose organic material into nutritional substances. And nutritious dirt is just dirt. But it can be turned into compost under certain conditions, so the two are not the same. You can find lots more information on this on the internet, so I'm not going to go over it here in details. Anyway, Reencle explained that the internal temperature of the chamber is consistently controlled between 113 Fahrenheit and 131 Fahrenheit, or 45 to 55 Celsius, to maintain the microbes, bacillus in this case, which are extracted from cheese and soybean. Moreover, Reencle claims its microbes also curb the growth of bad bacteria, and inside the Reencle there's the stirring rod to constantly turn the content inside the bin so it's evenly distributed. And the internal air is filtered and purified through the carbon filter. The Reencle Prime regularly costs $499 and comes with 2 Reencle carbon filters. Reencle recommends changing it every 9 to 12 months, which means as a consumer, we do not have to worry about the first 1 to 2 years of buying a new filter. Also, the Reencle is always on, so you can put in your kitchen scraps at any time. Let's talk setup. Setup was very simple with only a few steps. However, if you expect to use it right away after plugging it in and turning it on, then nope. That's where you're mistaken, my friend. That's not how it works with this fella. You have to wait 18 to 24 hours for the microbes to activate before putting any kitchen scraps in. It's not too bad though, to be honest. If you have scraps to dump in on that day that you receive it, then you might want to consider either putting in the fridge or put in the freezer. And if you put in the freezer, then during your setup, pour in 1.5 liter instead of 1.8 liter of water during the setup, because when you freeze the content, there's going to be excess water and you don't want your microbes to be drowning in too much liquid. Also, during the setup, it may get a bit messy with the carbon filter installation. It's no fault of Reencle, but I think it should have or could have been better noted that some carbon particles may fall out. One thing to note is the carbon filter is only taped in, so it fell on me when I was setting it up, which there's a note to let the consumer know that it's not locked in place. The design is simple with only 4 buttons on the large lid: power, dry, purified, and open. The dry button is to be used when the internal content of the composter becomes boggy with too much water, and purified is used when you notice a bad odor to reduce the smell. The design includes a small hook for the shovel in 3 different places, which I think is very helpful for the different placements depending where you want to place it in your home. For example, if there's a spot in your home that has just enough width for the composter without the shovel, but you have enough depth, then the shovel can be hung at the back, which also hides it from view. I appreciate little details like this. The stirring rods are a custom leaf paddle design for consistent blending, and they pause when the lid is open. The small lid can be manually opened, but it doesn't remain open this way. It can also be opened with the open button or automatic sensor, both of which will remain open for around 8 seconds. There's no sensor inside the composter though to prevent the small lid from closing on you, which is unfortunate because I got caught multiple times by the lid when I was still sweeping everything in or off of the plate. So I recommend Reencle to add that feature maybe for their 2.0 version. There's the automatic sensor at the foot of the composter to help you open the small lid without needing to touch the bin. And you can change the lock mechanism to either lock only automatic sensor or lock both the automatic sensor and the open button to avoid pets from accidentally opening the small lid. However, from my experience, the automatic sensor is so inconsistent because you have to get your motion almost just right at that sensor for it to pick up your motion. It's quite annoying to be honest, especially since I'm trying to move quickly here. Maybe it's just my Reencle, I'm not sure. Does your Reencle have that problem too if you have one? Lastly, about the design, the Reencle is a bit tall for most kitchen counters. It's 18.4 inches in height, so depending on your kitchen layout, it may not be able to sit properly to open the small lid all the way or fit on your kitchen counter at all. As for the noise level of the Reencle at 1 inch or 2.54 centimeter away from the composter, we got an average reading of 37.3 decibel and max of 38.7 decibel using the Decibel X app on my iPhone. Please note this is not a perfect test in any way, and at 3 feet or 0.91 meter, the average was at 34.1 dB and maxing out at 37.5 dB. It's definitely louder than what Reencle claims on their website, being under 28 dB. Now, depending on the sources, the decibel readings may be a bit different for various sounds, and decibel is the measurement of the loudness of sounds. However, they are not too far off from one another. For example, whispering can be as low as 20 dB based on Audiolab, while it's represented at 30 dB on audiology.com and nidcd.nih.gov for the National Institute on Deafness and Other Communication Disorders website. Here are some results from my noise tests in comparison to the Reencle. The noise level isn't bad for Reencle, but it's just not what they claim to be on their website. Based on Reencle's website, the composter uses 0.052 kilowatts per hour or 1.25 kilowatts per day and requires 110 voltage for US and Canada. Where we live, it's 0.1974 cents per kilowatt per hour, so it would cost us 0.247 per day, about 25 cents per day, and an average of about $7.40 per month to have this fellow running at all time. So you can turn off your Reencle if you're away for a few days. Reencle suggests leaving the composter on and running if you leave home for less than a week. But do pour in some water, just enough to wet the microbes evenly on the day you leave. Now, if you won't be home for, say, more than a week, then they recommend not putting food waste into the composter 2 to 3 days before you leave. And press the dry button within these 2 to 3 days to dry the microbes because you don't want them to get boggy while you're away. Then turn it off and can even unplug it on the day that you leave. And when you're back home, plug in the power cord, press the power button to turn it on, and add 500 milliliter of water to activate the microbes again. And wait for about 6 hours before adding your new scraps. Okay, so how does that work? Well, in layman's term, you're feeding the Reencle's microbes a recommended feed of no more than 2.2 pounds or 1 kilogram per day to produce compost. When the organic materials have been broken down, remove the compost with the shovel, leaving the bin at least a third full or to the minimum mark while removing or sifting out large pieces of scraps that haven't fully decomposed yet. Because the Reencle is a machine, Not every food scraps can be thrown into it. There are acceptable and prohibited food waste lists. Pretty much what you can and cannot add to the Reencle. So it's not as forgiving as if you were to let nature take its course in the garden bed. Although the user manual that comes with the Reencle has infographics on the acceptable and unacceptable food waste that you can throw into the Reencle, I find the infographics on there what you can and cannot put in the Reencle article more helpful because it also lets you know the food that would take longer to decompose, so more than 24 hours. Such food includes pizza crusts, watermelon rinds, stems, roots, and etc. For coffee and tea drinkers, it's worth noting that the coffee pots or plastic tea bags should not be added to the Reencle because most coffee pots are made of a combination of plastic and aluminum, which cannot be decomposed by the Reencle microbes. Even if your coffee pot states that it is biodegradable, they will consist of some sort of chemical coating which will block the activity of the microbes. You can take the grounds from the pots or the leaves from the tea bags and put them into the Reencle, but just be sure that there's no non-organic material mixed in during the deconstruction because you cannot have plastic inside the Reencle. You can also put in raw, cooked, or fried meat or seafood products. No bones though. Reencle states that fish scales, hard bones, and guts are treated as general waste and are hard to decompose, so they are to be separated and not to be thrown into the composter. Also, stems, corn husk, onion skins are actually classified as general waste, not food waste, meaning they're also difficult to decompose because they contain a lot of cellulose and membrane, which takes a long time to decompose. Reencle states that if you put them into the composter, they will dry and eventually break into small pieces and get mixed with the compost, but will take much longer time to decompose, or may even cause the composter to malfunction. And I'm referring to the long stems here because they'll get intertwined or entwined with the mixing rods. From my experience, the onion skin only got drier and smaller, but wasn't fully decomposed until past 10 plus days. As for other scraps, cucumber, for instance, the cucumber slices I threw in were all gone the day after. Cherry seeds and pistachio shells, however, didn't decompose much or at all and had to be taken out. For large scraps, consider chopping them down. The smaller the scraps, the better and easier it is for the microbes to break them down. As for biodegradable plastic, we briefly mentioned earlier, and the likes, Reencle says that they cannot be decomposed because they're still mixed with chemicals. If you want to break down plastics, then I think you're better off with the Lomi composter because they advertise that you can throw plastic into their products, or you can just throw the plastic into your plastic recycling bin. Reencle also recommends avoiding putting overly salted food or sauces into the Reencle Prime since it can interfere with the decomposition process. So if your food waste is drenched in sauces, then rinse it before placing it into the composter. Although not stated on their website, I was pretty sure pH level is affected because there are living microbes in the composting process. So I reached out to Reencle about this and they recommended to aim for incorporating food waste with a pH level ranging between 6 to 8. And their patented microbes possesses a high tolerance for acidic conditions. Based on helpmecompost.com, the pH of finished compost is between 6 and 8 as well. As compost decays, it goes through a cycle of varying pH levels. It usually begins quite acidic, but over time the composting material becomes more neutral, which seems to align with a research article in 2013 that there's often a low pH phase at the start of the composting food waste process. So if you throw in a few limes or lemons, there shouldn't be a problem unless you're filling a bucket full, which you may want to consider breaking them up in batches to avoid shocking the microbes. And moldy food is fine to throw into the Reencle as well. Within 2 weeks, my mesh filter inside the composter tank got really dusty. Luckily, the user manual states that we can remove the mesh filter and wash it with water. It's worth noting that the mesh should be hand dry and be put back to the composter right away because I don't think we should close the composter without the mesh filter. Now, there's no washing the bin, and please don't wipe inside at all with alcohol or disinfectant wipes. And during the decomposition process, the microbes will break down your food waste and the compost will be gradually filled up. Once the compost is filled up to the max line, scoop some of them out so the composter can continue to mix the mixture consistently. Now, you don't need to buy microbes regularly because they're self replicating. However, if your microbes start to not break down the scraps like they used to, then they're not at their optimal state and may be deteriorating. And if they're wet and sticky, then follow Wrinkle's YouTube guide or contact their support team for help, which in some cases you may need to buy fresh new microbes. Overall, I do like the Wrinkle because it looks like it does what I expect it to do, which is to produce compost from my kitchen scraps. Now, I don't know if it reduces exactly 90% of the waste as they claim, but I do notice that my large piles of scraps are drastically reduced or by at least 50%. It's been a month and the content inside the bin hasn't hit the maximum line yet, so I've yet to scoop out any of the compost. Also, it hasn't smelled when I have the lid open either. The bin doesn't smell anything other than dirt. When I put in orange peels, they smell like oranges, which I personally think is great. To be honest, I am skeptical about the carbon filters refills because it's like a maintenance fee if you really think about it. I may need to do an updated review at a much later time to see how these carbon filters hold up because I don't think it's wise for anyone to get a composter to reduce food waste to make more waste. Do you guys get me? We will see how it goes after a year. Now, before we speak about who I think this product is good for, it's worth noting that there are other indoor composter or comparable products to the Wrinkle. There's the Lomi and Vitamix food cycler. The Lomi is not a true composter unless you buy their Lomi pots, which is $30 for 45 pots. If you have lots of food scraps and cook often, then this cost will definitely add up. And although I think it's great that they can turn plastics and paper into dirt and potentially compost, there's a size restriction to the plastic size because you have to fit them into the bin. But honestly, if there's a recycling bin where you live and you're already paying for it as part of your utility bills, then it probably would make more sense to put plastics and paper items into that bin than to cut down to small bits and throw them into the Lomi. As for the Vitamix food cycler, it's not a true composter either, which I think is why they named it food cycler. It turns your scraps into dirt and that's it really. It's great if you have a composter that you can dump this into or mix it with your compost. It definitely has its first step of composting down, which is to break down the size of the materials for the bacteria to turn them into compost. However, it doesn't actually make compost, just dirt. Also, the food cycler costs more in the long run in comparison to the Wrinkle based on the carbon filter refills calculation because its carbon filter are around $25 for a set, which only lasts 3 to 4 months or 500 cycle hours. Finally, I think this product is best for someone who's living in an apartment or condo with little to no backyard, but you want to reduce food waste and you cook almost every day and you don't need to recycle plastics or paper because you have other means for them and you don't have another composting method. I'm being very specific here because if you have space for outdoor composting, then that's so much better for the environment and your wallet than spending money on a gadget. However, if you need a machine to break down the scraps during the winter time because it's too cold outside, but you don't need to turn them into compost because you have other means, then you have more options to choose from and basing off of the long-term maintenance fee of what will work best for you. It really all comes down to what you need and your current living conditions. It's worth noting that getting this machine is creating waste on its own because it uses electricity. Materials were used to create it. The making process creates some sort of byproduct, and once it's no longer working, it's now a piece of junk, which will go into the landfill. If you're getting this gadget in hopes of saving the planet, well, let me be brutally honest and say that it won't. But hey, it's your money, your choice. I'm just here to help you be more informed on the product. Anyway, apologies for my little spiel. But I hope you all find this video helpful. If you do, please click the thumbs up and subscribe. If you have any questions, please feel free to put it down below. Thank you again for watching this video and have yourself a nice day or night, wherever you are, my buddies. Until next time, bye!